about the start of the future. The next generation turned it into reality. Through time, through the desert, through the distance. Now, the UAE's journey to the future begins. Welcome to the Future Innovation Summit.
Do you have an all-star HR team? You may feel your team is already performing at a high level, but let's take a closer look. Would your company's top leaders and employees agree that your HR team are operating at a high level? Are team members able to influence top executives on difficult topics? Are team members business and strategy focused on the challenges the organization is facing? Does the executive team trust your direct reports as advisors on human capital issues? If you can answer yes to these questions, you have built an outstanding team. If you feel there is room for improvement, Strategy Focused Group can create a custom development program to elevate the quality of your HR team. We use HCI certification programs as well as non-certified HRBP MBA Masterclass to give your team a laser focus on the business and strategy. Please email us at info@strategyfocusedgroup.com.
Good morning, good evening, good night, depending upon what part of the world you're in. If it's Friday, it's the CEO series. My guest today on the CEO series is Keith Pigues, CEO and founder of CulTRUE. He's the founder and also the founder and CEO of Luminas Strategy, an organic growth business strategy and value proposition consultancy headquartered in Research Park Triangle in the U.S. His corporate leadership experience includes major roles as Chief Marketing Officer, Senior Marketing Executive at major brands such as Honeywell, R.R. Donnelley, ADP, it goes on and on. He has served in higher education as a professor of leadership at the University of North Carolina, Keenan Flagler Business School, and is a senior academic and administrative officer, Dean of the School of Business, and tenured professor of management at NCC University. Wow. It go on and on. Keith, thank you for being a guest.
Hey, Ron, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, looking forward to this conversation. Professor Dean, how do you go from Professor Dean to entrepreneur? Walk us through that journey. How do you make that decision?
Wow, that's a good question. Actually, I'm going to expand it a little bit because, being an entrepreneur now is a really full circle for me. So My father was an entrepreneur.
Okay.
And so I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. And then I after engineering school, I went to work in technology, in sales and marketing for IBM and HP. Then back to graduate school, did marketing and strategy for a number of different firms, some that you mentioned there, and was a CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, 4 times. Then I transitioned into academia, after leaving my corporate career. And then loved my time in academia, but had this burning desire, itch, if you will, to get back to helping organizations in the corporate realm. And so I took, the benefit of all those things I'd done and learned on the corporate side and launched a consultancy. So I went from entrepreneurship through a number of channels, including academia, then back to entrepreneurship again, back where I started with my dad a long time.
Yeah. So, we kind of match up with that because my father was also an entrepreneur. So I never was afraid to do that because I saw what could happen if it worked out. So you talked about the itch. You say you had that itch, and I know a lot of people suffering. Well, a lot of people experiencing COVID, and they have an itch. They're thinking about, could I do this on my own? Or can you kind of give us some insight as to how you were able to process the itch that you talked about?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I am a reluctant entrepreneur.
Okay.
And a number of people, as you might imagine, will ask, what's entrepreneurship like? I'm thinking about, getting into business, starting my own business, and they ask for advice. And I'm open to giving advice to anyone who's willing to listen. And what I try and do is talk people out of entrepreneurship.
Really?
And I figure if I try and talk them out of it and they still want to do it, then they're committed. And the reason I say that is, it's not for the faint-hearted, as you know, right? It's okay to have an idea. It's great to have an idea, but having an idea that really results in a winning value proposition where you can deliver something of value to customers or clients, and they're willing to pay you market rates for doing so, and you can do it over and over again, that's a business. That's entrepreneurship. That's not a hobby. That's not a side hustle, right? And so I was committed to only becoming an entrepreneur if I could do the following three things. One, do something that I was absolutely passionate about. And that I would do for free, although I'm not into doing things for free, but I'd be willing to do it for free because I'm passionate about it.
Yeah.
Secondly, it had to be something that was going to be innovative in the marketplace. It had to help solve a new problem or solve an old problem in new and exciting ways. And thirdly, it was something that could create value for customers or clients, and we could make a hefty margin, and we could grow and scale the business as a result. So that's my criteria. And it probably had to do with the fact that I had a long corporate business career before becoming an entrepreneur. And I understand that it's business.
Reluctant entrepreneur. So that's a slide I love to use in my presentations. And it's Mike Tyson's quote: everybody has a plan until they get hit in the face. And so I teach a course at Howard University Business School, and that's the slide I start with. And I said, you're going to get hit, and you have to be prepared to get up and keep going back and trying it over and over again. So that's kind of ties in to that reluctant entrepreneur, tenacious, and I'm going to keep going at it.
Absolutely. And I think to be successful as an entrepreneur, you've got to really be agile, and you got to be resilient. I mean, I think that's what you're saying. I mean, you're going to have a plan, you're going to have a business plan, you're going to have an idea, then you're going to hit the marketplace, right?
Yeah.
And the marketplace might give you a right cross that you weren't expecting. And then when you recover from that, or you duck from that, they give you an uppercut, right? So, because you don't know what's going to happen until it happens, but you do have to have the flexibility, the agility, right, and the resilience to be able to come back again. There's an used word, I think, pivot, and that happened a lot during the pandemic. But entrepreneurship is about a lot of pivoting, sensing the marketplace and where it's going, and sensing competition, right, and being able to make decisions over and over again based on this new information that you're getting real time.
So one of the other key nuggets that you talked about is Monday mornings. I always tend to use that. I said the Monday morning, what does Monday look like? Are you excited about Monday? And I use that as kind of a litmus test, doing what you're doing, going to solve the itch. And does the itch solve the Monday morning that you're looking forward to? And I think that's what you were talking about. Can you expand on that a little more about the Monday morning?
Yeah, because, it's interesting. I remember I enjoyed my time, as a corporate executive. I mean, it was wonderful. And I think I contributed a lot to most of the companies that I worked for. I got a lot of value in return. I mean, I really enjoyed it. It gave me great experience, and I benefit from it now. However, on Sunday evening,
Yeah.
I would get this feeling in the pit of my stomach sometimes when it was time to get ready for Monday morning.
Yes.
And that pit, I've come to learn later, was just the disconnect, the misalignment I had between what I was doing and my passion. So I was good at it, the corporate work, but I can't say that I was passionate about most of it. And so Monday morning was a time where I had to get up and put on the uniform, if you will, and
Yeah.
go and fight the fight, attack.
Go to battle. Go to battle.
Right. And do battle. But now on Monday morning, I'm so excited because I'm working in my passion. I can't wait for Monday morning. It's a great new start, the beginning of a new week to go and help more clients and more customers win. And I love it. So I think that separates the Monday morning feeling and maybe even the precursor, which is a Sunday night feeling in the stomach. I think helps people to understand if they're in the right place, doing the right thing at this time in their lives.
Yeah. Well, I read I quit a job based on that Sunday concept because Sunday was awful. And the closer it got to be the evening, it was awful because I had to deal with the Monday morning. But I came across some research and they said 85% of the workforce goes through, it's called Sunday night angst. And they said if you're thinking about, measure the times you're feeling distress. So if it starts on Sunday morning when you're getting up and you're worrying about Monday, which is almost 24 hours away, you've got issues. And lots of times we don't deal with that issue. So that's why I wanted you to expound on that, because that Monday morning that if you decide to become an entrepreneur, you're going through all the challenges, but you're looking forward to that because you're passionate about it.
Yeah. And I think more and more people are beginning to understand that and take action. And in fact, one of the reasons I think we've seen this great resignation
Yes.
is because people had a lot of time at home with their families, without the commute, without the other, they got off the treadmill for a bit and realized that they were experiencing that pit in the depth of their stomachs. And it wasn't just on Sunday. It was on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. And they were like, I got to do something different. This is not working for me.
Yeah. I'm getting flashbacks, but it's cool. It's a good flashback because that was in another time zone. What advice would you give to senior leadership inside of an organization? And let's take it through that Sunday night piece. And how do you build that workforce that's excited about Monday? What can an organization do to enhance that transition into the first day of the week?
That's another really good question. And I know a lot of people are thinking about that right now. A lot of CEOs and C-suites are thinking about that. And let's face it, they're thinking about it, many of them now, because they're forced to. Not many organizations focused on this question or this issue prior to the Great Resignation, but now they're forced to. And I think that's a good thing for everybody. And here's why I think it's important. I think it's important because people were already on this path to find what we call at CulTRUE greater fulfillment in their lives. People were already on this path. The pandemic just accelerated the pace. That's all. It's not new.
Yeah.
Some companies already knew it. Some companies had a glimpse. They were looking at some leading indicators.
Yeah.
And some companies many companies, unfortunately, were blind to what was really going on with their people in their lives, right, as people. And so the advice that I would give, as you ask, I would give the CEOs the following advice. 3 things. Stop, look, and listen. Now, I know that sounds real simplistic, right?
That was a song too.
But stop. Stop the status quo. Stop business as usual. Step off the treadmill for just a moment and realize that the world has changed. I was talking to a CEO of a company a couple of weeks ago, and he was sharing with our team the experience he was having with losing employees.
Mhm.
And he was talking about things that they were going to double down on. They were going to double down on getting better information from exit interviews, right? They were going to double down on increasing benefits and double down on, other, salary, and double down on those things. And so I asked the question, since you've been increasing all of those trinkets,
Yeah.
but your retention has gotten worse, what gives you confidence that doing more of that
It's going to make success.
is going to solve the problem, right? So stop doing what you've done because the world has changed.
Yeah.
Second, look at your people, look at your workforce, and even more importantly, look at those who are poised to come into the workforce. They don't look like and behave like the people you've already had in your workforce. So if you don't look, get a bird's eye view of things. Look at the demographics, right? Look at behaviors, right? Look at the psychographics. When you look at the generational cohorts, the world is changing because people are changing. Therefore, workforces are changing, and companies need to change to keep up. So look, and then listen. And this is the big one for us at CulTRUE, because we just don't believe that organizations are listening to the right things when it comes to the relationship between a company and its employees or its talent.
Yeah.
We all have been a part of the engagement surveys for a long time now. Now, the world didn't start with engagement surveys and measuring the relationship between a company and its employees or its talent. It actually started, if you remember way back, it started with employee satisfaction. If you remember, right?
Yes.
That was era one. And then people said, well, just knowing whether an employee or employees are satisfied is not enough. We want to know if they're engaged. And so we moved to employee engagement. It's our contention that employee engagement has run its course, but people don't know what else to do. And here's what gives us that belief. In 2018, organizations reached the height, all-time high, of employee engagement as measured by the employee engagement surveys, 32%. Now, how long have we been at employee engagement? How many billions of dollars have been invested in employee engagement?
Yeah.
And the all-time high in 2018 was 32%.
Wow.
And since then, it's been on decline for some of the reasons we talked about before.
Yeah.
So we think that has run its course, and for two reasons. One, I don't know that employee engagement and the score is really an indicator of whether somebody's going to stay with your company. It's not really a measure of retention, because I can be engaged on Tuesday, have a bad experience with my manager on Wednesday, and deuces on Thursday.
Yeah, and never recover.
Right. And that's because we believe it's the culture that matters, right? And employee engagement gives you no real direct, insight into how your culture is performing for people. So that's a little bit long-winded, but stop.
No.
Look and listen to your people in new and different ways to understand what really matters. And that's where we spend our time at CulTRUE.
Yeah, so I want to cover one point you made there, and then I want you to talk us still about culture from your company. You mentioned trinkets, and I was the former CEO for a great place to work in Dubai. And as I look through companies that are struggling, I'm offering you this, and I said, you're bribing people to like you. You're bribing people to be engaged. Can we listen more? And that was a hard sell, because they're saying, well, if I can do this, people are going to be engaged. If I were to do all these kinds of things, and the term that you used was trinket. So talk us through culture, your company, and how you address those kind of issues when you're brought into a company.
Yeah, that's a good question, you know, and I use the term trinkets, and by no means that I mean to, you know, in any way, you know, discredit the things that organizations are doing. And I know that when there are tough decisions, when you're thinking about increasing compensation and expanding benefits, right, and those are real costs, and there a lot of thought goes into that, you know. However, when you think about what I said earlier, this is a relationship. So if you could think about, you know, what an employee has with a company is a relationship. And like any other relationship, right? You're asking the question, what is expected of me in the relationship? So what should I give? And then what do I expect in a relationship? What do I get back? And both of those have to be in sync, aligned for the relationship to continue to grow, to flourish, and to thrive, right? And so I think when organizations begin to think about the relationship that they have, not with employees, but with every single employee, because each single employee may want something a little bit different in that relationship. Now, you can then put them in segments, if you will, or in groups, those who want the same or similar things, but you've got to start with a unit of one, because people leave your organization one at a time. And they come into your organization one at a time. They don't come into your organization as a demographic group, right? So here's what we believe. If you're going to get after this, you've got to see your people in ways that you may not be able to see them today. And so I was having a conversation with the senior talent officer at a large tech company, and we were having this discussion, and I said, help me understand what it is you know about your people and what you don't know. And she said, what do you mean? I said, what do you know? She says, well, you know, we know we've got people's background. We've got their educational background, right? We've got their resume, or CV. So we understand what they've done, where they've had an impact, experiences that they've had, right? If they've been with our organization for some time, we have their performance record, right? So we know how they performed, right? You know, we've done all of the assessments. So we know how they think, how they behave, how they lead, how they communicate. We know all that stuff, right? And then I said, do you know what fulfills them as an individual? And she says, what do you mean? I said, do you know what they get from your organization in terms of helping them be fulfilled in life as a person? She says, I don't think so. I said, well, imagine this. Imagine going through the radar detector at the airport as you're going through security. Imagine if you had something like that in your company, that when a person comes into their workday, you could see inside of them and you could see what they really care about.
Yeah.
If you could see what they're made of, right? What their greatest aspirations are, right? To what extent they want flexibility in their lives. You know, what relationships do they have with parents or children or other aspirations that are important to them, where they're trying to match up with this relationship they have with you? I mean, and where do you fit in their lives? And she said, so what you really are saying is, if we could actually see inside of a person rather than seeing the stuff around the person, we might really get to know the person. And I said, if I had a microphone right now, I'd drop it.
Yeah.
I said, but what's happening is that people want to be seen. They want to be known as individuals, and they're making a decision every day. Am I aligned? Is what fulfills me as a person in alignment with this culture within I'm working? And I think that's the question. And that's what we help organizations to do.
Okay. So is that a technological process that you use for that surveys? What's it based upon?
Absolutely. Based upon a scientifically validated survey.
Okay.
That helps, first of all, the people the talent, the employees, understand what brings fulfillment to them.
Okay.
Because many of them are around the edges, but they don't really know. It's kind of like taking a Myers-Briggs, or Enneagram or any other of those. The individual gets some insight about him or herself to say, wow, now, I can think about my experiences with companies over the past, and I kind of knew when there was a good fit, and I kind of knew when there wasn't a good fit, or I knew if I started off in the relationship, it was good, and I can kind of pinpoint where it went south. This helps the individual to say, now I understand. Yes. I understand what fulfills me. And then the second thing that we do is the second part of the survey is for the individual to assess of the company culture, as indicated by the company values, which of these company values contribute positively to my fulfillment in this relationship, and which of them detract from my fulfillment in this relationship. Oh boy, that's where it gets real for the leaders of the organization. And so we ask this question. If you go to our website, this is the first thing that you see. Does your company have the culture you say it does? Because every company is like, this is our culture, these are our values, right? The question is not what you think and what you believe, leaders. The question is, what are the lived experiences of your people every day? Mm-hmm. And engagement surveys don't get at that, right? And that's the problem, right? So what we've done is we've developed a way for individual people, the employees, the talent, to understand what really fulfills them, for them to make the assessment as to whether there is alignment with the cultural values, because they get to choose to stay or to leave or to suggest improvements. And for the organization now to see it at a bird's eye view, to see hot spots in the organization, hot spots in terms of gender or ethnicity or location or specific teams or functions, where is there a greater alignment between the fulfillment of our people and our cultural values, and where is there less of an alignment? And then we help them to sort out, okay, now given what you've learned, the insights, what do you do about it?
Yeah, what do you do as a next step kind of approach? So one of the things you just mentioned that was interesting to me, and I have this discussion a lot with leaders, you have your mission values. On your website, it says all these things. So this kind of touched a nerve when you talked about this approach that you're using at your organization, because if I were to stand outside your door and ask people, can you give me the mission core values of the organization? They probably will not be able to answer that question. But on the website, it looks great. You're saying all the right things. So the wordsmiths put this beautiful language together, but in a lot of cases, there's a total disconnect. I had lunch yesterday with a CMO friend of mine, and we worked at the same company for years. And we talked about that point that you mentioned, that everything was cool, then it wasn't cool. And then both of us decided to leave because it wasn't what it was before. So that transition point of understanding that the values that we talk about. And I think lots of times leaders, here's what I found from my time as CEO for Great Place to Work. The higher you go in the org chart, the better view of the company. The company says, we're doing all these things, we're cool, but you get down to here, the employee base, total disconnect. And this is the same thing you were saying, because we say all these things, but we're not living it. So your tool will be able to give us further insights to dig into that, to figure out why is this disconnect and what can we do about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, we think about that communication, if you will, of a company's culture or values as a proxy, right, for culture in three levels. And I think it partly answers the question that you just raised. When you think about the highest level and what you would find on the website or in the annual report, right, or when it's used most prominently when you're recruiting new employees, right? Yeah. Right. You're putting that culture front and center, right?
Yeah.
And let's be honest, when you're recruiting, you're only given the best view and the best version. And in some cases, it's aspirational. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's be honest about that, right? And leaders in many cases can get behind it and go, yeah, rah, rah, rah. Yeah. Okay. But those are your claims.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's be clear. Those
Yeah.
are claims, and again, maybe aspirational at best in some cases, right?
Yeah.
But then you get the next level down as you start to dig down into this. And next you get to policies, right? And procedures, right? Stuff that you want people to do and stuff that you want people not to do.
Yeah.
And you make it clear to everybody in the organization, if you do these things, if you behave in this way, you're good. If you do these things or behave in this way, it's not going to work out so well for you, right? Now, those don't cover all of the values, but those are the things that are like top of mind if you got to have a short list.
Yeah.
But that's not your culture.
Yeah.
The third level, where we help organizations get to, what are the lived experiences of your people every day?
Mm-hmm.
So when I walk into the organization as a customer service manager, a director of marketing, a VP of finance, right? Or a manager in compliance, what is it like working with the people that I work with, the manager whom I work for, right? Doing the work that's before me in the industry in which I'm working, right? With a relationship that allows me to have a full life while I'm working, which is only a part of my life, right? And to be happy, healthy, and whole. Now, when you ask that question of employees, you better watch out because they're going to tell you. But therein lies the answer.
So, Ade, can you put Arshavad's comment up again? A friend of mine from a colleague in Dubai says what we say about culture and values is what is actually experienced is quite different. So there's that big disconnect. And so my thing is, if I stood outside the door at 5 o'clock, would I get the picture that you're talking about? Because the vast majority of time, we would not. And there's that total disconnect. So one of the key things about today, I can go to Glassdoor, I can go to LinkedIn, I can look up your so-called reviews, the same as I would for a restaurant. And it may not look good. I mean, you can say all these things, but if I'm looking there and 60% of the comments are in a negative light, you've got issues. So if we were to go through this process and you come out with all the kind of a list of things, the possible solutions, does your organization carry them through that, or do you kind of say, here it is, and you're going to work with it and take it from there? Or do you guide clients through the process? Because lots of times you provide this valuable information, they may not know what to do with it because that's not their area of expertise. So how do you guide them from those findings to take it to the next step?
Yeah, you've hit on something critically important. Yeah, first of all, absolutely, we guide them through the process. And so, we have a consulting team made up of former business leaders, right, who've been walking in the shoes and making those decisions and being responsible for the implementation and the results, the business results. And so absolutely. And that, again, is one of the challenges with some of the engagement work today. You get the data, and then there's really no way to take steps to actually implement meaningful and impactful changes and then close the loop on the back end to say, did it move the needle? Did it really move the needle? And we hear clients over and over again saying, we do this engagement every year. We get the actions that come out. We're not really sure whether these actions that we are taking are the right ones. And the ones that we take, we don't really close the loop to see what the impact was. The other thing that we find is that typically the engagement survey does not give you insight into the deep cultural challenges. And we believe that, so a lot of organizations will ask us to come in and help them with work around DEI. It's something that we do. It's one of the things that we do, but our primary focus is around culture. And there's a connection. What we say is, when you think about DEI programs, they are important, but they are like seeds. They're seeds. So organizations invest in these programs, they're important, but they are seeds that are planted into the organization's soil, with the soil being culture.
Great metaphor.
And if you have soil, culture, which is not really appropriately aligned, right, with what's required to fulfill and keep your people, you can keep planting seeds in that soil. You won't get a great harvest, or you can go deeper and you can really examine the soil.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we say is, even if you're going to focus on whether they're DEI strategies or programs or other types of human capital related programs or strategies, they will all be more successful if you first answer the question, do we have the right culture? And what cultural shifts do we make to ensure that we are aligned? Now, let's spend more focused effort on the seeds, the programs, right?
I love the metaphor of the greenhouse because I use that so often. The seeds come in, new employees. Is the soil, is that correct? Temperature, sunlight, are we nourishing those kinds of, this new level of talent that comes inside of the organization? So I've always kind of, now that I look back on it, I looked at kind of engagement survey, that's just scratching the surface. You're not getting down deep. And what you're talking about is getting down deep inside the organizational relationship to the individual. Am I on point as I?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Looking at that individual and looking at the relationship that that individual has with the company. Again, I can't underscore this enough. It is a relationship. And let's face it, that we are in an era right now where we move from a company-driven relationship,
Yes,
to an employee-driven relationship.
yes,
Some organizations understand it. Some organizations are beginning to understand it. Some have read the memo but don't believe it.
yes.
They will soon, right?
Yeah.
But employees rule. And
Yes.
okay, so this is not just emotional, right? Look at the data. Look at the data. Look at the data, and particularly in certain industries and certain job and profession types, you know, demand is greater than supply. It's basic economics. When demand is greater than supply, right, power shifts, right, from supplier to those who are buying, right? We're buying talent, right? Pricing goes up, right? It's basics, right?
It's basic economics. Yes.
It's basic economics. And so, and when you look at the long-term projections for people and their availability with certain skills, experiences in certain job types in certain industries, and now people's desire to work in some places or certain types of jobs or others, it's not a skill issue, it's a desirability issue, right? People rule. Now, that's not to suggest that companies ought to be, you know, cowering. It's to say, I need to understand people now better than I ever did before, so I can win.
Yes. Yes. It's a business case.
It's a business case.
It's a business case.
There's a war for talent. Okay, how do you ensure that you're prepared to win this war? Because your business depends on it. And so, I mean, now is a time for people to go deep and really understand their talent. Not only the talent they have inside the organization, but the talent that they acquire.
Yes.
And if you pick the right people and move them into your organization who are a better fit and alignment with your culture and their fulfillment, they're probably going to stay longer.
Yes. Yes.
So, you know, so there's an application as well on the acquisition side, right?
So let's take a commercial break and we'll come right back because I want to pick up on that point that you just mentioned. So we're going to take a break and we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
When the founders of the United Arab Emirates marked the start of the future, the next generation turned it into reality. Through time, through the desert, through the distance. Now, the UAE's journey to the future begins. Welcome to the Future Innovation Summit.
Okay, we're back. You mentioned before we went out on break, employee driven, versus organizational driven. The employee is now in the driver's seat. You mentioned the business case. Totally new dynamic inside of organizations, and no one is going to sign on for you and stay 20 years anymore. So how do we max that 5-year tenure? And is there a way that we can capture that and create that experience that now people want to come in and they see what's coming? When they come in, they align that with mission, core values, all those kinds of approaches.
Yeah, you mentioned before the break about standing outside the door, right, of the organization, right, and and I think what you were getting there is, hey, you might have these things written down on your website or in your annual report, your values and what you care about, but is that something people experience, right? Is that what they actually experience when they come in? And so if I took that a step further, I would ask the question, so what do your employees say to their spouses, best friends, and close colleagues?
The real deal.
At the end of the day, if you could actually get a glimpse into the text messages that they send after they've had a meeting with their manager or boss, or after they've just gotten the annual, feedback, right? If you got the information that they sent to their trusted friends and colleagues, would you be shocked? And I would say in many cases, the leaders would be absolutely floored, because the leader's perspective of what just happened and the employee's perspective of what just happened and what they experienced are 180 degrees apart.
Yeah.
So what we believe is that you have to find a way to get employees to talk about what they really feel. They don't do it today.
Yeah.
They don't do it. Not even in exit interviews. In fact, most employees don't even want to go to an exit interview. They're done. I mean, their relationship's over, right? I don't want to see you again. Right? So it's important to understand that. We believe that people will tell you what really matters to them if you ask the right questions in the right way at the right time, and it comes from the right source. And we think that's what we've nailed, right? And so people are able to answer and tell you these incredible things that they've wanted to share, that they share with friends and loved ones, but you've not asked the right question in the right way, at the right time, from the right perspective, and they may not trust you.
Trust. So the other key point you mentioned was exit interviews. If there's not a level of trust, forget about the exit interview. That's just wasted time. because no one is going to expose that to an organization. So how do you build trust inside of an organization? So I think a lot of HR teams are kind of confused, and they think they have to lead the trust issue. They think they have to lead the engagement. What is the C-suite's role? Because my thought has always been, you have to drive that. There's no magic person that's going to come in and solve it if you don't live, eat, breathe, and sleep that every day.
Yeah, you're right. You got to live it every day. So this is the way I think about it. You know, I taught a leadership course in the full-time MBA program at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. It's called Elected Leaders. And it was a course for all of the elected and appointed leaders in the MBA program. In that course, I included a segment on trust. And in fact, I used the book, The Speed of Trust, right, to help the leaders understand what's required to create trust with their people and their teams and an environment of trust. And then to also understand, you know, how quickly that trust can be broken and how difficult it is to restore trust. And we all experience that in our own personal lives. So we understand that, right? But sometimes organizations forget that they have to earn the trust of their employees. They have to earn the trust of their employees. And it's fragile. And they can lose that trust at any time, right? So one of the things that we do is that, for example, when a member of the team, an employee, takes our survey, they get the results, they can choose to share it with a manager, their peers, or not. It's for the employee. It's a way for them to really understand what brings fulfillment to them. Many of them may want to share it with their managers because for once now, I have a way to be seen. I have a way for that manager to see more of me. In fact, what really matters to me, who I really am, beyond the performance review, beyond the development discussion, beyond my resume and my CV. And increasingly, millennials and Gen Z want the manager to know because they want a different kind of relationship.
Exactly.
But the employee gets to choose. Now, here's the deal. If the employee chooses to share the results of that fulfillment survey, that manager better be ready to have a different kind of discussion.
Yeah.
Because it's not the performance review. It's not the development plan. It is a relationship. And let's be honest, many managers haven't been through that training. They didn't get that in the organization. How to have a real person, people to people, person to person relationship with someone, you know, with whom they work. And that's what's called for in the workplace today. I'm not saying be friends. I'm saying know each other.
Yes, beyond the work level.
Right. You've got to demonstrate that you care about the person, not just what they produce.
Yes.
Right. And therein lies the opportunity for trust, because we also know that if you can establish trust between an employee at whatever level and their manager or their peers, then the organization has the opportunity to have a broader trusting relationship. But if I don't trust my manager, Ron, look, man, there's no way you're going to get me to trust the organization.
Exactly.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah. So, you know, there was an interesting case study years ago that Google did. It was called Project Aristotle, and it was based on psychological safety teams. And the Korn Ferry also did some research, and it said 70% of the effectiveness of a team lies with the relationship between the manager and that team. Performance level, all these kinds of things. But in a lot of cases, the people that are managers maybe should never have been managers. Maybe they were chosen because of technical skills.
You're absolutely right. And one of the things that we provide is a way for the managers to understand, now that you have been given the privilege,
yes,
and I mean that, the privilege of receiving Ron's fulfillment
Yeah.
survey results. Ron is opening up himself to you in ways that he's maybe never opened himself up to anybody else in the work environment before. You're going to see all of Ron. So we need to teach you and help you understand how now to interpret those results, what they mean, and most importantly, what you do or don't do. Now that you have that information, how do you now use this to develop a trusting relationship with this employee? All right, how do you manage that? And you've, I'm sure, have heard of or read the book, as many of us have, The Messy Middle, right? And we know that a lot of strategies and plans, right, where do they go to die? In the messy middle of organizations. Executives have great ideas, they have great strategies, they have great plans, and then it gets down to middle management and middle management, right? And so it's important to focus on helping middle management to understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, the benefit for everyone involved, including the benefit to them. And to your point, it also requires us to rethink what's really required to be an effective manager. Today and going forward, when, in just a few years, 70% of our workforce is going to be millennials or Gen Z, and they lead with values. They lead with relationships, and they want trusted relationships. If your organization has not prepared your managers, your team, to develop and cultivate those relationships, you're going to have a rough road ahead.
You're touching on so many nuggets here. My way of looking at that, my metaphor for C-suites is that you have a new customer. If you had a new customer that was demanding different products, different engagement levels, you would adhere to that. Well, on the flip side, your employees are looking for the same thing. They're looking, that's your new customer. How are you going to go back and make sure this workforce is engaged, make sure this workforce is glued to, and the organization is setting the standards as to how we're going to make this work. So from two sides, new customer, new customer.
Ron, you're absolutely right. You and I spent a little bit of time, before the show talking about that, right? And sometimes people are a little bit, I don't know if it's amazed, surprised, or shocked when they see my background. I'm a 4-time chief marketing officer, right? They go, you go from an engineer to a chief marketing officer, and now you're over here talking about HR and people analytics. What is this? And I think what we certainly have found and are finding, and I think others are finding the same, is that the approaches that worked, that we've used forever with customers, companies and their relationship with customers, we're moving those now to the world of HR and people, right? And I think that's one of the reasons we're finding success. So you're right. If you look at your employees as customers, right? You are in a relationship with them.
That's right.
There has to be a mutual value exchange. You have to have a winning value proposition. They are not all the same. There are segments. And so what do you do in marketing? Segmentation, targeting, positioning. So you've got to understand the segments or groups of your employee base that are alike or similar in ways that matter in terms of delivering the value proposition. And it requires you to understand more about them, the kinds of things that we're bringing, fulfillment, that go beyond the data and the understanding that you have today. You have to do that to get to the right segments. Then you're able to target them discreetly and deliver the value proposition and position it and message it to them in ways that resonate with them. That marketers do that all day, every day. And we're helping organizations to begin to do that with their people and with HR and analytics. So the approach is proven. It's just a new application. right?
New application, different audience. How can someone that's listening in now, how can they contact you, your website, or can you give us that?
CulTRUE.co, CulTRUE.co.
.co.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
cool.
so, and again, our name is not there by accident, right? CulTRUE.
Yeah,
And then the question, do you have the culture? Does your
yeah,
company have the culture? You say it does. And
yes,
how do you develop the
yeah,
true culture, the one that's truly needed,
yeah,
right, for you to succeed in the marketplace and win and attract and retain the critical talent that you need to be successful?
okay. Keith, I knew it was going to be a gem, and it was. Thank you so much for bringing this insight to the audience across the globe. So just hang on for a minute as we close out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you for having me.
Okay, just hold on.